Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Sarah Jones with Politicus Radio. Joining me to talk about Flint and the Democratic debate tonight is Politicus USA's editor-in-chief, Jason Easley. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah.
We are minutes away from the Democratic debate, which is taking place in Flint, Michigan tonight, where Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders will draw national attention to the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. During the debate, we'll also hear the results probably from the Maine caucuses, with 30 delegates going to the winner. Maine has long been touted as a harbinger of the election results, and the Sanders campaign has said they believe they have a path to victory. Maine looks like it will be a part of that path. Currently, Clinton has 651 delegates to Sanders' 456, not including superdelegates. So, Jason, what can we expect tonight during the Democratic debate?
Well, I think we can expect a complete refocusing of the discussion back on Flint. The whole purpose of having this debate in Flint tonight is to call attention to the crisis. It's there to help the people of Flint get the attention and especially aid they deserve, because Senate Republicans have been blocking the bill, namely Republican presidential candidate Ted Cruz, that would provide federal funding to Flint to help with this crisis. So expect the Republicans to get their heads handed to them by both Clinton and Sanders. Expect lots of discussion, hopefully, on the differing viewpoints of the role of government in a crisis between Democrats and Republicans, and expect the Democratic candidates to really demonstrate what actual concern for their constituents and the American people looks like in this debate.
You know, Michigan is a good example of how Republicans like to govern, and what is some of the differences between the ideologies between the Republicans and the Democrats, where Republicans, for example, in Michigan, Governor Snyder passed the emergency manager law. The people put it on a ballot in 2012 and actually managed to vote it out, and then he just passed another law that couldn't be voted down by the people. I mean, he literally just added, ooh, here's a little asterisk. You're not allowed to vote this law out.
He took away the recall option.
Yeah, well, he took away democracy, basically. I mean, this is sort of what's gone on. But what I think is so important about Flint is that it's important that we address this crisis, but it's also important that we look at how this happened. And right now, everybody's pointing fingers and Republicans. The only thing they said about this during their debate was to defend Governor Snyder and say Democrats are politicizing the debate. And they said this in Detroit, where ironically, the same emergency manager who made these decisions, Darnell Early in Flint, was put in charge of the Detroit public schools after he messed Flint up and poisoned everyone there. He ran up all these bills in Detroit. Isn't that ironic that that's what the emergency manager's there to supposedly, they're given all this sweeping power to cut bills and cut the deficit and make everything,
get finances in order.
Right, in order, like Republicans claim. And yet they had to pay him $83,000 to leave his job early because he's so incompetent. Imagine that money could have gone to the teachers. They were cutting teachers' pensions. They have rats, cockroaches, and water dripping in the Detroit public school system right now. So it's a stark difference in ideology between how Republicans view government and how Democrats view government. And I think you're absolutely right. We're going to see that in the debate. We're going to hear about it tonight.
I would suspect that this is going to be, at least in partially, maybe the first section, less of a political debate of Clinton and Sanders vying for votes and more of an overarching broad discussion of the fact that Republicans have basically sat on their hands and in the case of Republican senators, told the people of Michigan they need to pay for the Republican Party's, for the Republican governor and his administration's poisoning of the people of Flint.
Right.
They want that money to come out of needed funds and programs that help the auto industry in Michigan. That's the Republicans' big plan. They want this to be self-funded, and the people of Michigan should be punished because their Republican governor and his administration poisoned a city.
Well, to me, this needs to be taken apart thread by thread, because it is all part of the larger plan that it seems like Republicans are doing on purpose. And I'm likening this to what President Bush did with Katrina and ignoring the need for the levees and all of that, and then it's a disaster and it costs, $500,000 or 500,000 times more what it would have cost if it had been addressed preventatively. And we're seeing the same thing. And then when things go awry, they turn around to the victims of the crisis that they created by ignoring reality and ignoring science and ignoring facts, and then they make the victims pay even more. So then they get to take away. It's very much like an abuser. It's like an abusive person will say, well, I wouldn't have hit you if I wasn't so stressed, so you've got to do more for me now. That's what Republicans are always doing, and they turn these into a negotiating tactic. Oh, you're poisoned, you want clean water? Well, gee whiz, in order to get that, we're going to have to take away from the school system, and take away from the teachers, take away from the unions, take away from whoever it is that they're out to get. They'll take money away from those people. Isn't that, it's always, they view this as a negotiation tactic. Democrats never see it that way. Democrats are busy running in to the crisis, trying to patch the holes, make sure the kids aren't being poisoned. And they're angry, yes, and I don't think it's fair, though, to say that they've politicized this. If anyone has politicized this, it was Governor Snyder bringing this law to Michigan and reenacting it after it was already voted down.
Yeah, first of all, Republican governance seems to always find new and different, seems to be best described as the characteristic of finding new and different ways to profit off the government.
Right.
And that's what really jumps out at me with this emergency manager that actually is being profiting off of his incompetence and getting fired.
Right, and it's actually like the more incompetent this person is, the more they pay him. And of course, I was thinking about this today. Why did they give him this $83,000 to leave? And if they have that kind of money just sitting around, why aren't they helping Detroit school system with that money that would pay? Because they're paying practically nothing to the teachers now, that would pay 2 teachers for the year, but they're paying this fellow to go away and do nothing. But as you have pointed out, part of this whole thing is that this is their way of punishing people. It's a weird goal to people who view the government as something that's supposed to help, but this is their way of...
They want to make people hate the government. Sorry to interrupt you.
Exactly.
They want to make people hate the government.
Exactly.
And the way they do that is by putting incompetent people into positions so the government doesn't function properly. Or in the case of Congress, they intentionally take actions to make sure that the government doesn't function properly.
Right.
Because this is all about harming the government while profiting.
Right. That's the other thing. I would really love to know which contractors were given the jobs to divert this water. Who they know, who they who they supported. If they have political action committees that donated money to Governor Snyder, because this is all it looks very much like what Republicans often do, and of course he's already doing this. In the prison system in Michigan. They turn everything that's supposed to be helping the people, and they turn it into how to profit off of the people, how to take public land that was donated to the people and give it to rich corporations so that they can enjoy it and the people get nothing. I could go on and on because I'm from Michigan about the areas they've plundered, and Governor Snyder was going to come in and take all the art from the Detroit Institute of Arts because we've got to pay these bills off. That's you don't take a city's art. It's like taking the books. That's the last stand, man. It's like it's Fahrenheit 451. Don't burn the books.
They're literally trying to, because as you know do very well because you're from there. Detroit is a Democratic city and an African American city, so it seems like they were trying to, from an outsider's point of view, they were literally trying to strip the civic essence out of that city.
Well, they are. They don't seem to believe in but the old Republicans did believe in civic duty, but these Republicans don't seem to at all. What do you think that we're going to hear from Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton tonight about Flint? Do you think they're going to, obviously that's going to be a big issue. What's the goal, though, in order to bring attention to this issue?
What I hope to hear what I really hope to hear as a sub-discussion here. Michigan is rated by watchdogs as the worst state for campaign finance laws. They have no campaign finance laws. This is the most unregulated, corrupt political financing system in the state of Michigan in the country. So I would really hope that Clinton or Sanders, most likely Sanders knowing the themes of his campaign, would bring up the fact that Michigan has literally, it's the worst case scenario for campaign finance. It's a national Republican's dream. There's nothing. And because there's no good campaign finance structure, regulations, laws, prohibitions, you get a crisis like in Flint. There aren't two opposite things. There's a direct correlation there. I really hope that these candidates take the stage tonight and they discuss this crisis in the most human of terms, not as Flint itself as an isolated incident like Republicans try to make it, but as a microcosm for what can happen across this country.
I think you're hearing that from Democrats. They keep talking about how this broke the bond of trust between people and the government. I know Nancy Pelosi says that a lot. And I hope that they also make the point that Republicans are blaming the federal government for not finding what was wrong in Flint earlier. Republicans love to talk about local government and keeping power localized until there's a mistake, and then they point their fingers at the federal government in order to create hatred for the federal government. It's one of the things they love to do, but it drives me nuts, especially in this case, because the people at the local level lied to the EPA. They lied on their tests. They were supposed to test the water where they know the lead is leaking out of certain pipes. They're supposed to test in those places. They said they did, and they did not.
It's one of the great hypocrisies of conservative ideology that they, as you said, they want power localized. But then when local power in their hands goes horribly wrong, like what happened in Flint, they immediately point the finger to the big federal government boogeyman.
Yeah, do you know what they literally sound like to me? They were like, well, Mommy and Daddy and the federal government didn't come and catch me, so it's not my fault, well, you took advantage of the system, you lied, you deliberately made choices that you knew were dangerous, and then you lied on these tests in order to avoid being detected. You can't claim you knew there was a problem and you ignored it. You have emails that you won't give us, but we know you have them, alerting you to this problem. So how is that the federal government's problem? You hid all that from the federal government. That makes you the bad guy. But you even hear liberals buying into this argument, and to me it's very dangerous. And I think people need to realize that the government isn't perfect, certainly, and the government can always be more competent. The government can always be more efficient. The government is not perfect. It's actually a huge, cluster muck of an organization. However, it's the best thing we've got going, and no one else is doing it any better. So instead of hating it and going along with defunding it, that's the other part of the thing. They defunded the EPA, and now they're blaming the EPA. They're understaffed. Now they're blaming them. This is what they always do. Starve the baby, defund the baby, then blame the baby.
That's true. And to go right along with that point, what do you think would have happened if this crisis would have occurred in Paducah, Kentucky, instead of Flint, Michigan? What if this crisis would have occurred in Mitch McConnell's home state or a Republican state? Would we be hearing, oh no, we can't speed federal aid there? Would we be hearing the blaming the baby, starving the baby? Would this whole mentality be happening if it was a Republican governor in a red state where the man in charge also represents that same state in the Senate?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course not. We saw this when Snyder first took office, and I'm stumbling with my words here because I'm just so emotional about it. We saw him, they started to harm people in different cities in Michigan, poor people, predominantly African Americans, and there's no way that anyone can say that this isn't deliberate. And I'm not going to say the word that's on the tip of my tongue, but it's right there. And I hope everybody knows what the word is. I'm not going to say it, but and it isn't there, but it is along that path. It is starving people, it is harming people, it is taking away their right to vote, it's taking away food